The word seriousness and the word serious and Boris Johnson do not ever, should we say, end up in the same in the same sentence. But in when they do, it tends to be we can't take seriously Boris Johnson's government or even take Boris Johnson seriously. And this has been what he has been like through his entire career. And again, I still sit in shock when you hear, especially a lot of like the conservatives that backed Boris Johnson like heavily to the hilt, remembering back when like he was mayor of London and apparently Boris was all the rage. And of course, this is where again the myth of Boris Johnson being like a good leader and he was doing all these good things is of course comes to complete nonsense. But this is part of the big grand myth that Boris spun. And of course, if there's one thing that Boris can tell, it's a good story. And because he's been able to tell that good story, he's been able to keep the lie going. But sooner or later, as especially now, he can't keep it going anymore. He's far too much in the spotlight. When he was mayor of London, he could sort of get away with it every so often, but not anymore that he is, should we say, the PM, because after all, the buck is meant to stop with him. He even said it apparently many times before, according to Dominic Cummings. But if you need, you know, there are times when you need serious solutions to serious problems, and we are in a situation constantly like that, especially coming out of COVID and the depression that we are coming out of, again, the post-COVID era. It's going to demand serious problems for serious solutions, and we haven't got a government that is like that, because Boris Johnson might be the PM, but he hasn't surrounded himself with a cabinet of competent people, because you can't have that, because, well, then that make Boris look like the fool. So today we turn to this very interesting article written by the former French ambassador about the current spat that's been going on between Britain and France, in which way I agree. How can you work with Boris Johnson's government when you can't take them seriously? So before we do jump into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with this. This comes from The Guardian, the title of "It's Impossible to Work Seriously with Boris Johnson's Government." Britain and France have a long and intertwined history, encompassing both great friendship and solidarity, as well as war and rivalry. And this was evident most recently following the terrorist attacks on our respective countries. It's a relationship that can still be characterized as sweet enemies, as Phil Sidney put it in a sonnet of 1591. We are twin countries with more or less the same population, similar economies, and the same status on the world stage, as permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and nuclear countries with military protection capabilities. As members of the same international organizations, we've often held the same positions, coordinated closely. With this respect, the cooperation split has been particularly strong among diplomats from our two nations. Any procedures and mockery have remained at most friendly, or have been delivered with a touch of humour, as in 2012, when both Boris Johnson and David Cameron riled up Francois Hollande's government by saying that they would roll out the red carpet for the French businessmen who were highly taxed in France. The then French Minister of Labour, Marcel Spin, retorted with, "Frankly, I don't understand how you can unfurl a red carpet across the channel. It would get quite wet." Sadly, I feel Brexit has changed all this. The rivalries that were once largely cordial have turned sour and now unfriendly. France has been reportedly accused of wanting to punish the UK for Brexit. The French position is simply that the decision to leave the European Union has made the UK a third country. This is not a punishment, but a term defined in EU treaties, with many legal and regulatory consequences. The French government and public opinion alike are irritated by what it seems like is Johnson's determination to have his cake and eat it. The implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol is at the heart of this current tension. Becoming a third country requires land or sea borders. The aim is to protect the European internal market, and the French may be more vocal about this subject, but their position is a shared one by EU institutions and all its members, and even by the Americans. We can't understand how an agreement negotiated, signed, and proclaimed as fantastic is not then respected by the very people at the heart of it. It has created a real loss of trust in the British government. The fishing dispute is also seen in Paris as emerging from the British violation of their agreement with the EU. This allowed the European fishermen to continue operating in British waters, provided they were already doing so before 2016. It is seen as an act of honesty towards France and other countries that have successfully obtained licenses, where dozens of French boats had their applications rejected. They tended to be small vessels without GPS systems who have spent all their lives fishing in these waters, and their livelihoods are now at stake. This explains their despair and anger and some very harsh actions. And of course, the question of refugees is the most difficult one. Mary Tudor once said that you shall find Calais lying in my heart. And of course, it remains a place of dispute between France and Britain. Some Brits say that France should take back its migrants and accuse the French police of incompetence, suggesting that Britain's withdrawals, its complete financial contributions, this has provoked again outrage in France. These payments have not been made out of the generosity, but because the French police are generally guarding the border for the British. The hostility has become so bad that some candidates for next year's presidential elections have also suggested the Littoral Treaty on the border controls should be scrapped, saying that the UK really wants to take back control of its borders, it can do so on its own soil. France has more than twice as many asylum seekers than the UK, and those who arrive in Calais are often desperate to go on to Britain for several reasons. Because they speak English and can find work more easily there, because they have relatives there, and because of lack of general legal safe routes to get across. Whatever new enhanced security measures are introduced in the future, asylum seekers will continue to come, and it is impossible to control 150 kilometres of coast at once the tunnel and the port have been sealed. Paris, of course, is finding it impossible to work seriously with Johnson's government, even in the manner with an issue of refugees has been addressed as annoyed by them. Johnson's letter to Emmanuel Macron was tweeted to the world in a very Trumpian fashion, drawing the comment, "I am surprised when methods are not serious. One does not communicate on those issues from one leader to another via tweets or a letter made public. We are not whistleblowers. Come on now." Meanwhile, France's internal minister, Gerald Darmanin, has criticised the double talk of the British, constructive in bilateral talks behind closed doors. Then a day later, they oppose publicly for domestic political reasons. Our nation's two leaders have very different visions and personalities. In other times, they might have very well gotten along and had a very serious, very European French president might have been very amused by a man who once said he would not sacrifice a good joke to tell the truth. But right now, the stakes are too high. The British government seems obsessed by its large and closest neighbour, and France has an easy scapegoat in a very difficult period. It will unfortunately take time for the new entente cordiale before it is formed. I sort of agree with this. The new target, of course, is no longer the EU. It seems to be again blamed on France. And if the Tour Treaty, which again allows the British Border Patrol to check passports on French soil and French soil the French to check passports on the British side, if that is torn up, there is no doubt in my mind that the British government, shall we say, will use it as an excuse to attack again France. Like I say, if there's one good thing the Tories like to try and dissuade true attention from attacking the EU, it is probably attacking France, aka the old enemy, as many of the Tories like to even describe it as. So, where is this going to go? Boris Johnson, we've already seen announced just a couple of days ago that he wants to ratchet tensions down, because it's not a good idea if you want to, shall we say, help resolve the situation in the channel with the border crossings when you're antagonizing one of the people who can actually help you solve these crossings. Now, of course, again, there's many things that our government could do, indeed creating legal safe routes, which is again what they should be doing, but they're not. Again, it is leading to a very humanitarian crisis, and there will be people have already died in the channel because of these complete callous and anti-humanitarian strategies that people like Priti Patel have taken. But of course, This indeed shall continue, but if you do want a very interesting book on UK French relations, if you are in the UK, it's called 1,000 Years of Annoying the French, and if you are in France, it's called 1,000 Years of Annoying the English. So definite recommendation from me there. But as always, thanks for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all